I'm Matt Martelli. This is the Off-Road Racer Podcast, and I'm here with my brother, Robert Blanton. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah, no, this one's been a long time coming, and I was stoked you were able to come down. There's a lot to talk about, but let's just start with the very beginning of who you are. 21 years of service in the military. You earned this thing called the Silver Star for bravery. And then you retired and you created Warfighter Made, and that's how we met. But I don't even know where to start from. You came back from, serving in the military. What compelled you to start Warfighter Made?
There was a couple things. Coming back, as you said, I was awarded the Silver Star, which is our nation's third highest award for what they refer to as extraordinary heroism. And along with receiving that award, you also receive a lot of issues with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury and so on and so forth. Specifically, me and my brother, Gonzo, who's the driver in a vehicle that we were in, we got blown up by an insurgent wearing a suicide vest, right? And so having a bunch of issues with post-traumatic stress, which all of my issues revolved around anger, right? I would snap at the flick of a switch, and I was in charge of instructors who were making recon Marines at that time, and it just wasn't a good mix. And I kind of plus I'm drinking my face off. This is how I'm coping with, what I don't know what's wrong with me. And there was a specific event where I may or may not have gone hands on somebody, and my instructors kind of stopped it all, and a peer of mine, a fellow master sergeant in the Marine Corps, had just actually shown up. He and I were peers, but he held a higher billet than me. And one of my instructors went to him and was just like, "Hey, I don't know what's wrong with Blanton, but he just had this episode and da-da-da-da." And my brother Mo basically literally snatched me up. He's a big Samoan guy. And he was like, he had that heart-to-heart with me. He's like, "Listen, man, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you're getting ready to basically spend a lot of time in Leavenworth or at a minimum get kicked out of the Marine Corps. So, you need to figure this out." And that was kind of what started my journey to basically start healing. And unfortunately, at first, it started off terrible. I basically sucked up my pride, went and talked to a doctor, and the doctor was looking at the rank on my collar, and I think he figured that I'm a pretty senior Marine. I'm getting ready to retire, and I'm trying to pad my medical records so I can get some disability afterwards. But the truth was I'd only been in for 15 years at that time, and I still had 5 years to go. And so basically this doctor accused me of being a malingerer, of a faker, right? And he ended up getting moved someplace else. And then when I finally got...
That's crazy. I mean, you finally get the courage to ask for help. And then your first experience asking for help is somebody telling you that you're faking it.
And I have a short fuse. It did not end well for any of us. I mean, I was almost in cuffs. But the mistake I made was, at the time, I was at a training unit, and we were on a place called School of Infantry on Camp Pendleton. And it's where all brand new Marines that are going to be infantry Marines, or even all Marines that are going to be basically that are coming from west of the Mississippi, they all go to Camp Pendleton to go to either a thing called Marine Combat Training.
Yeah.
And then if they're going to be an infantry Marine, they go to Infantry Training Battalion, School of Infantry. So unfortunately, these doctors, who are civilian doctors, are seeing young Marines, literally 17, 18-year-old kids, every single day that are trying to get out of doing a hike or, whatever the case, right? And I don't know if it basically, he looked at me after I was just like, I don't know what's going on. And he's like, wow, it sounds like you read a pamphlet on symptoms of post-traumatic stress. And I was just like, what does that mean? And then he said something else. And then it was just, it was, unfortunately, it was game on. So after that incident, then I finally got to somebody who kind of cared. But unfortunately, the first thing everybody wants to do is, here, take these meds.
Right.
You know, these meds are going to make it all better. And I'm not a med person. You know, it's like, tell me what's wrong with me so I can work it out through my brain and you know, get better. And so for a couple years, I was doing all kinds of experimental therapies. There's one called immersion training, where you literally, this was a super long one. I think I was doing it 2 times a week for 6 or 8 weeks. And you are literally reliving all of the traumatic events that you had been through in your military career. And, you know, I served in combat in Somalia right after Black Hawk Down had happened. And then I had 3 combat deployments in Iraq, with my last one being in 2008. But my first one, I was in a force recon platoon, and we actually inserted into Iraq before the ground war started. And we actually kind of gave the brevity code to start the ground war, and we actually had a front row seat to that whole thing.
Right.
Not a traumatic event, but things as you go along, you know, just how you deal with things growing up kind of leads to what imprints on you and what doesn't. So like I always say, adversity builds mental toughness. So as I know, you know, not coming from the best areas or the, you know, growing up in the best scenarios, we tend to be pretty mentally tough.
Sure.
And, but every brain has a breaking point, and, you know, certain things start to affect you. So doing all these therapies, I had to do this one therapy. It was called Healing Touch, right? You lay on this like massage table, and the very first therapist that there was this really good looking, she was like an Indian woman, right? And, you know, she was all crystalled out and everything. And, you know, and she's like, okay, what I need you to do is I need you to relax, close your eyes. There's like a little light on in the room, and, you know, she'll grab your foot and she'll be like, right now I'm pulling all the negative energy out of your foot, and I'm taking that negative energy in, and, you know, whatever. And then after a little while, you know, I won't open my eyes, but I can kind of, you know, when you have your eyes closed and you can kind of tell when a hand is, so I'm like, I feel like there's a hand in front of my face. So I open up my eyes, and she's standing over the top of me, and she's going like this. And I'm like, man, what am I doing here? Right.
Sure.
But I was going to keep coming back because she was hot. So,
Right.
But the next time I show up, it wasn't her anymore. It was some older lady. And I was like, all right, I'm out. But it's like all these experimental things. And some of those therapies work for some people. Immersion training, they take a baseline, and at the end of the therapy, they you know, reevaluate your base. And I was actually worse than when I started.
Yeah.
So immersion training didn't work for me. Healing Touch didn't work for me. What really ended up working for me was therapy. But unfortunately, I ended up having a therapist. One of my big issues was I felt like I was ruining the relationship with my kids. And after a couple years of putting off meds and, you know, trying this and that, the therapist finally looked at me and she's like, listen, I know how you feel about meds. I know you don't want to do them, but do them for your kids. I think I can help you. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to take meds. Well, unfortunately, at that time, I was also still drinking, right? So now I'm mixing antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications with alcohol. Also, during this 2-year process, I'm only sleeping about 2 hours a night, right? And it's fragmented.
Right.
And so I would go for 2 to 3 weeks of doing that every night. And then sometimes I would wake up and it would be 6 o'clock at night. I went to bed at 6 o'clock the previous night. I slept basically 24 hours. Look at my phone. I've got 30 missed messages, 15 missed calls, and everybody's like, Blanton, where the hell are you at? You know, it's like, what's going on? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do meds. And my med journey was not good. The only thing that I'll give meds credit to is it calmed me down from the standpoint, like I was a nightmare with road rage, right?
Sure.
And I remember I'm taking these meds, and you know, it takes a week or two for them to you know, take effect or whatnot. And I remember I'm driving to work, and driving to work was always the worst for me, right? And I remember I looked in my mirror and somebody was tailgating me. Now, pre-med, I would have slammed on my brakes, you know, just tried to get them to pull over, and just, you know, I was a jerk. And I remember looking, and I remember my brain saying, you know, you need to react to this. But the body just wouldn't, right? And then I was just like, huh, this is what it feels like to be normal again. And, but of course, again, mixing alcohol with the meds. I woke up one night and I was just like, this is it. This is not where I want to be. You know, my wife would be better off without me. My kids would be better off without me. I'm a burden to everybody, you know, I was going to kill myself. Thankfully, my wife, who was also an active duty Marine at that time, woke up and stopped me. And I was in the process. I own a 69 Camaro. And this Camaro was given to my mom as a high school graduation present in 71. And I picked the car up in 89, where it had been sitting for like 10 years. And I had a couple people that were helping me do some things on it. And after I had that issue with suicide, Halima reached out to one of the guys, Butch Lynch, who currently had my car, and he had a shop in Marietta, California, called Imagineering Shop. Butch unfortunately passed away in 2020. And so she reached out to Butch, and she's like, hey, Rob needs to do something more than what he's doing right now. Can you know, you bring him in and give him things to do on his car? So he's like, yeah, absolutely. Brings it in. He's giving me little tasks. And as I'm doing these little tasks, I'm like, man, like normally I'm a million miles. When I'm looking at it, I'm touching it. But normally my mind is a million miles away. I'm thinking about 100 different things. But when I'm working on my car, because I don't want to screw it up, it's actually helping me. It's relieving of my triggers and my symptoms and with post-traumatic stress. So after telling Butch that, and then we met another guy, Brian Meyer, who is a combat wounded triple amputee, EOD Marine. And then we actually had a fourth guy that came to us, and Warfighter Made actually started out under another name. But then we had some issues. That guy, in my opinion, realized that everybody was looking at me to be in charge and not him. So he was upset that it was like, well, you know, I brought this to you guys. This is kind of my idea. So he took off and kind of did his own thing. So the three of us left and started Warfighter Made. And so that's what led up, sorry for that long drawn out conversation, but that's kind of what led up. Butch was looking for a way, because Butch wasn't a veteran. Butch was looking for a way to give back to vets because he had such a love for, you know, America and veterans. Brian, you know, is a catastrophically wounded triple amputee. He just wants to help whoever he can. You know, he has a great story and he likes to tell it.
Well, plus he's a visual example of like, okay, this guy's been through some stuff, right?
Without a doubt.
And so if this guy can, you know, keep walking forward in life, then, you know, maybe my problems that I'm internalizing aren't so bad, right? Like I saw through our relationship, I saw the interaction between him and other veterans and active duty guys. And you could see that, right? Of like, they're like, hey man, this guy's missing a leg and an arm. I can't really complain about my situation, right?
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of what it was. Like our current vice president, Juan Dominguez, is a combat wounded triple amputee, both legs and a right arm. And what he's done, I mean, he's in a band as a triple amputee. He plays drums. He still plays electric guitar with one hand. Music is his passion. And, so that's kind of what it's. Warfighter Made is kind of there for all all vets, all branches, all eras, to say, hey, we know how you feel because we've all gone through it as well. Let us show you a different feeling. Let us show you that you don't have to overreact. You don't have to think negatively all the time, because when you surround yourself with positive people, it's hard to be negative. When you surround yourself with negative people as a positive person, you start becoming a negative person. So, and then of course, Warfighter Made started adapting and customizing vehicles for catastrophically wounded warfighters free of charge. We had nothing to do with off-road. And then Butch's daughter, Kelsey, who's my de facto little sister, started dating a guy, Adam Fitza, from now OTSFF Off-Road, and Fitza Racing. And Adam came and was helping us build a Harley for a triple amputee. And one day he was just like, hey, I kind of help run this Lucas Oil short course team. My boss, Bill Blansky, who's unfortunately passed away also, he's got a second seat in this Predator desert buggy. Why don't we start putting vets in there? And we're like, okay, let's try that out. So got down there. Of course, Brian's the first one. I got a crack to sit in it, and I was just like, man, this is scary as hell, but it's also kind of exhilarating. You as you're getting ready to hit the ski jump at Lake Elsinore Motorsports Park, you definitely don't have time to think about your triggers or your stressors or any of that stuff. And it was kind of like this adrenaline-filled rush that it's hard for specifically combat vets to re-experience the adrenaline, because when you're in combat is for your average warfighter, combat is defined by months of boredom, 10 to 2 hours of the most adrenaline-filled things that you could ever imagine, followed by months of boredom, right? Well, and then if you operate at a higher level, it can be a little more intense than that. But eventually your body gets used to operating at this high level of adrenaline, and it's really hard to recreate it when you come back to your regular civilian life. Which is also kind of a reason why the military was having a really hard time with guys coming back from combat, spending the money that they just saved up, being deployed on the latest, greatest motorcycle, a leader bike, and then killing themselves on the 15 or the 5 because they don't have the skills to ride 180 horsepower motorcycle. And so we were like, hey, let's start doing this for vets. And Lucas Oil got behind it. And what was also cool, though, is that, the off-road community loves veterans.
Yeah.
And so we started making friends with racers. And one of the first friends that we really started to make was the Merrill brothers from UTV Wolfpack.
Yep.
And then eventually, because Bill, Adam's boss, who also who was racing the short course and putting the vets in as passengers, was also racing a heavy metal truck at the Mint 400. So we get invited to the Mint 400. I think we reached out, whoever we reached out to at that time, we were given a booth space on Fremont. And the Merrill brothers came up to us and like, hey, we got somebody we want you to meet. Come with me right now. So I take off, and go down one of the side streets, and they introduced me to Jason DeFucia, right, of Polaris Razor.
Yeah.
And Jason starts talking me up, and I don't really even have to say anything, and all of a sudden Jason DeFucia looks at me and goes, so if I give you 2 machines, what would you do with them? And I literally pulled something out of my butt, and I was just like, hey, we're going to take these, we're going to do recreational therapy. We're going to put vets behind the wheel, let them experience, the adrenaline, take their mind off of stuff, so on and so forth. And of course, DeFucia was just like, okay, cool. Yeah. I'm going to give you 2 machines, and then we're going to end up hiring UTV Underground Mad Media to promote it. Right. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. So then we get to hang out.
Yep.
We go up to Mammoth, California.
Yeah.
We do an exceptionally awesome trip up there.
Yeah.
And then when you guys produced the video and sent it, Polaris didn't tell me they were doing this, but they promoted it on their social media and said, hey, if this video gets 100,000 views in 24 hours, we're going to give 2 more machines to Warfighter Made.
Yeah.
Well, that all happened in 2014.
Yeah.
Right. It's 2025. Polaris is still our biggest sponsor, and it's just been a fantastic relationship, and then that just segued into we did a couple of those trips, and it's just been, then we started getting introduced to UTV World Championships, and then we started racing the Mint 400, and it's just been awesome.
It was, it was really a remarkable time and opportunity because, I think like a lot of civilians, like we want to donate to the right cause. We want to, write a check, and we want to think like 100% or 80% or a large percentage of that money is going into helping veterans, especially, veterans who've seen combat and need help, right? And, we've all seen the bad news about different organizations, paying administrators, exorbitant fees, and then what is the actual effect of it, right? And it's such a large problem, right? But what I really liked about what you guys had done is like you created this out of your experience, right? And you were like, look, there's a hole, and I'm going to start doing work on this hole that's, not being filled, right? And then you evolved, and when we met and you explained to me what recreational therapy was, I was like, yeah, this sounds like bullshit, right? Like, okay, like I get it. We're gonna help veterans, and we'll go along with this whole thing. But frankly, I was like, man, sounds like bullshit. But we're in, all right. Yeah. But after that trip, that trip was so eye opening to me, because what it showed me is that you had distilled down these things that you had watched work, that worked for you, that had worked for through observation of other war fighters, and whether it was like you were just describing, riding in a vehicle or driving a vehicle, like you can't think about anything else when you're in there. That's why people love it, right? That's why wealthy CEOs of companies come racing, because they're like, you know what, the board can't call me while I'm in my race car. My wife can't call me. There's no tax filing or what. I just got to focus on this. So it allows you this escape that, is, better than anything else, because, like drugs and alcohol all have repercussions, right?
Right.
But then the other part of it though too was the camaraderie and, taking that group of veterans on that trip and seeing, the interactivity, and like see them laugh, and like just forget about like, all the shit that's going on in their life that's stressing them, that's triggering them and so on. And they just get to be human beings for a minute. They're almost, the experience forces you into that, and it feels really good, and also, Jason, Craig Scanlon, and Polaris, like they backed up what they were saying they were going to do. It's funny, and I don't know if you feel this way, but like every Veterans Day comes around, or any of the days that celebrate the military, and everybody does their social media posts, and they do all their niceties, and I'm like, I sit there and I think about it. I go, what are you really doing? Like, are you really, because if you really want to do something, write a check to Warfighter Made. 100% of that money is going to be used, in helping, veterans, right?
Yeah.
And then that's one of the things that I really liked about it is like, it almost made me addicted to seeing the result, right? Because I don't like writing a check and being like, yeah, I hope it does, This doesn't feel good to me.
Right.
But being involved with you guys for however many years, and then year by year with the Mint, and seeing you bringing in a new group of guys to have this experience, and seeing them at the finish line, going, man, that was crazy. That was the coolest thing I've ever done. And I'm like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is what gives these guys, I don't know what you want to call it, but like energy, hope, to just go, okay, I have all this pain and this stress, but there's this glimmer, there's this few hours, this few days where I feel really good. And maybe I can do that more. Maybe I could feel that way more.
And that's exactly what that is. Because like I always told Polaris, I was like, listen, the reality of it is I use you as a hook, because it's hard to get a veteran to, especially if they're dealing with some stuff,
Sure.
right? It's hard to get them to come out of their comfort zone and come hang out with us for a while.
Yeah.
And so I use the razor as kind of the hook. Like, and it's not, hey, bro, come out here and sit passenger while I drive. It's you get to drive this thing. You get to experience the fun of this and the adrenaline and the puckering moments and so on and so forth. This is all you. So come on out and do it. It's the same thing. I use the Mint 400 as the hook we bring veterans in from all over the nation, and I get them to come in out of their comfort zone off of racing in an off-road race and experiencing what it's like to be a part of a team again. And it's actually been, we're 6 years. It's been super successful, and I mean, just dozens and dozens of different veterans have come through it, from catastrophically wounded. We've had a number of female vets out there racing.
Yep.
And this year, so 2021, when we ran it in December, we had Mitch Malott, who was a combat wounded single leg amputee, left leg above the knee. He was 50 years old. We had built and surprised him with a dirt bike adapted specifically for him. He was like, hey, I want to give back to you guys. I'm going to race this thing at the Mint 400. I'm like, all right, cool. And then this year we had Jesse Williamson and Dan Stoner. Jesse Williamson is a combat wounded double leg amputee. Jesse Stoner is an injured single leg amputee. And Mitch was actually a part of their team, but he was starting to have an issue with his prosthetic fitting properly. So he's like, hey, I've already done this once. I'm going to let these guys go out there and rip it up. And those guys went out there and finished and had a great time. And I got to tell you a funny story. Jesse Williamson, the double leg, obviously he's riding with prosthetics, and he's cruising along, and he doesn't need any adaptations. Like, he can shift with his feet, not in the traditional way. He basically shifts with his heel and then steps down to downshift
With his prosthetics.
Yeah. Right. So at some point, he's ripping through. He's basically just out of the infield by the pictures, right? Because you can still see the roller coaster to Buffalo Bill in the background. And he goes to put his foot on the peg, and he feels something weird. So he kicks his foot up and looks at it. His foot fell off. Right. So there's a really great photo of him that, your guys are everywhere, and they snap these photos of him basically riding, kicking his foot up. And so he pulls up to, he sees a green vest, Mint 400 worker out there, and he comes flying up and he's like, hey, my foot fell off. And like the panic in the guy's eyes was just like you ripped your foot off? And all of a sudden Jesse's like, no, prosthetics. It fell off. I'm fine. It's like a mile back there. Can you downshift my bike for me? And so like the guy ran up, friggin' downshifted. Jesse took off. And then the guy jumped on his bike and he rode back on the course and actually found Jesse's foot and then brought it to him in the pits. So he could so it was such a rad time. And, but those are the great things that we get to do for everybody. And then, it's a great opportunity for veterans to meet veterans and share that. And I know a lot of these guys continue friendships and relationships long after the mint is over. And like one of the race teams that I did I think it was the 2022 mint. I was in Flyer 22, and I had a brother with me that I served with in the grunts way back in the 90s. And we had two other guys. And that was the year that we had our first national. We had an Israeli Defense Force guy with us.
Yes.
And I know all those guys still communicate and make fun of each other and joke and, show that veteran love. So they're still friends. So that's really what we're trying to do and then we do another thing. So the recreational therapies where we would go out to Mammoth or Glamis or Camp Razor or whatever the case was, has now turned into what we call recreational family retreats. And we do this in Akatia. A buddy of ours, Nick, who served in the Air Force in the late 70s, early 80s, did well for himself, ended up buying a bunch of property out in Akatia. It's on the right side of the 78, overlooks Blowsand. And he's built a ghost town out there called Running Rock Ranch. It's got a working saloon, bathrooms, a church. I mean, just all these different buildings, but it looks like an old Western town.
Right.
And he basically lets us use that place for free. And we bring a whole bunch of vets out there to include their families. We go and rent razors from one of the local rental places. And basically Friday night is just hanging out, getting to know everyone. Spouses are meeting spouses. Vets are meeting vets. Kids are meeting kids. And at first we used to have this we had some things that we wanted to accomplish on Friday night. But after a while, you start noticing that all these kids are immediately making friends with each other. And then they're running around being kids, playing hide and seek and tag and all this, different stuff. And so then we were like, okay, we're going to relax the schedule on Friday nights and just kind of knock it out on Saturdays. And so it's just a lot of fun. Like Saturdays, everyone goes out, we ride, we go to all the cool places that Akatia has to offer. And then, we provide all the meals. We have a veteran-owned company called Limitless Catering that does all the cooking for us and everything. And it's a really good time. And Saturday night, we tend to let our hair down a little bit. Sunday morning, pack up and take off. So it's low fuss, It's not, you don't have to agonize over being gone for
a week,
a week and so on and so forth, just dedicate a weekend to me. You'll be home, Sunday afternoon, or, if we got to fly in because we've flown vets in and so on and so forth, but it's a really good time.
No, it's really cool. And it's really important to us that, we, really celebrate the fact that this culture was created by veterans, right? The Eakins brothers, who really kind of launched this thing by doing the first Peninsula run, were both World War II vets. Mm-hmm. And, throughout the culture, we've had, active duty and veterans racing, chasing, fans, so on and so forth. So, through the relationship with you, but also, we're next to Pendleton, right? So I live in Oceanside, and I see the physical effect of war, of these warfighters coming back and the injuries that they have. Like, they're in my city, they're in my town, they're at my coffee station, my coffee shop and breakfast. And like, that's the community that I live in. And so, it just really made us want to recognize that and talk about it, because it was always there. But nobody was like, hey, guess what? That this is part of our culture. And I feel really good that we were the off-road racing league / events / promoters that did that and said, hey, we're going to put this forward. This is going to be one of the pillars. And then we're going to expand it and create, the military challenge to bring more active duty and veterans out to race active duty vehicles, and the vintage vehicles, and just have that be a celebration of like, hey, at every Mint 400, you're going to see these military vehicles with big American flags go off the line. And everybody's going to cheer because this is part of being American, is being proud of our military, and
the off-road culture supports it.
100%, 100%, and it's great, and we want to do more, but what's really cool about what you're doing is like, everybody wants to do the big shotgun, like, oh, hey, look, we solve veteran suicides or whatever, right? That's ultimately one of the goals. But you've done it in a way that's very, person by person and very effective, right? And I think that's very cool and commendable, and it's, again, one of these things where like anything that we can do to bring light to, not just the problem, but the solutions that you're creating, right, I think is very important for us as a culture.
Well, another program that we started based off of kind of what you were talking about is we do a program called BOLT, Building Off-Road Leaders of Tomorrow. And basically, so what we're doing is we're taking the kids of veterans. We have a whole bunch of Razor 170s, and we teach these kids how to be basically good stewards of off-road. We have a large environmental piece on it, thanks to Tread Lightly. And then it's a large safety portion. And then we put these kids behind the wheel of these Razor 170s at this Running Rock Ranch, because he's got a little course cut out for the kids, and just teach them the basics and then let them go out and rip. And the idea behind that is, we're mentoring the next group of off-roaders to, maintain the fun, but be responsible to keep our off-road parks and everything open. Because I know for a fact you guys, deal with BLM all the time and how, tough it's getting. But the hope is also through the kids, we're reaching the veteran. Like, hey, we're now giving you guys something to do together. Whether you're brand new to off-roading or you go out to Akatia, Glamis, or whatever all the time, we're now giving your kids the skills to participate and have fun with you, to really keep that family nucleus going, and, give the veterans something else to look forward to.
Sure. So. No, I think that's great. I mean, as you have, again, I've watched the evolution, because, first you're attacking the problem head on with the veterans.
Right.
But then you're like, hey man, like, they have a family.
Yeah.
And just dealing with the veteran is only part of the solution. It's bringing the family into it. Right. And I think that's really cool, man.
Yeah. And it's been working well. From the standpoint, it's like, we're always excited when a spouse comes to us and it was just like, hey, I don't know exactly what it is you guys are doing, but it's working, because my vet is happier. They're actually looking forward to coming out to the next event, and so on and so forth. And for a lot of us veterans, we know that, it's hard to get out of our comfort zone. And for a lot of us, our comfort zone is in our house, with our family. So if we can open that up a little bit to them, get them back out, get a little vitamin D on their skin, and
Sure.
enjoy the sun and whatnot.
And just build them a community,
Right.
because we're in a bizarre time. Like we all survived this weird experiment with COVID, right? And we have social media on top of that, and we've got all this wild stuff going on in politics, and you know what I mean. It's like the world's wild,
Right.
And unfortunately or unfortunately, because of the internet and social media, it wasn't like when we were kids where it had to go through this distillation of news media, and you were getting kind of like a little bit more of a balanced output of it. Right now, it's just whatever crazy thing can be said is being said. So
Right.
I think that community is become more and more important, especially to just normal psychology of a person of like, hey, there's this group of people that are surrounding you that care about you and can help you good times and bad times, and vice versa. They need your help. They need your input. And I think that's one of the interesting things about the act of car building is like, you don't really do that by yourself. You have to work with people and share knowledge, and you'll hit a wall and you're like, man, that transmission is like this weird magical box, right? And then the transmission guy's like, oh no, it's a gear, it goes here, it does this, and you're just like, okay, dude.
Yeah, so much voodoo.
Yeah. But then they help you through that problem, and then you're through it and you're like, oh, okay, that really wasn't the end of the world, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that now more than ever, what you're doing is very important, and just bringing people in, and especially veterans, because it's got to be just wild, because the biggest gang in the world is the U.S. military, right?
Right.
And you come back from combat or even just training, and then you're like, all right, I just got to be normal and operate in this normal world, and like the volume just got turned down to zero, and and then you have all these stressors, and then just like. It's like the lack of respect part of it, of how normal society acts. I always tell the story, and it was something that had happened like right, after we had met, and it really gave me this kind of resolve to want to do more for our veterans. Was there's a coffee shop in Oceanside, and the kid who was working there was like in his mid-20s. Mm-hmm. And, combat wounded veteran, missing an arm, missing part of his leg, scarification all over his face. Like he's visibly damaged. Right. And for me, it's easy to look at somebody like that and be like, this is war, right? Mm-hmm. Like I can see these are wounds from a war. This isn't a motorcycle accident. You know what I mean? And, so he's working at the coffee shop, and, I was like 3 people behind the counter waiting in line, and the guy up in front goes, hey man, how'd you lose your arm? And he mm-hmm. goes, oh, I lost it in the war. And this was, during when we were still occupying, right. Different parts of the Middle East. And the guy looks at him and goes, what war? And I'm like, I literally reached over and put my hand on this guy's shoulder, and I said, hey, I'll pay for your drink. Why don't you see you later, right? Yeah. Because I felt like if you're that guy, if you're that young man who, went over and sacrificed all this, and you come back and people don't even know about, like they're not even acknowledging the fact that, a war is going on. And I just was like, I'm like, hey man, sorry. And he was cool about it. He's like, no, it's all good, man. People are in their own worlds. But it just, again, it made me think about what our responsibility is to recognize military veterans and active duty military, and let them know, hey man, we appreciate you. You know what I mean? Like, this is an important mechanism of freedom. ongoing, and that's never going to change. Do I wish that there was a day where everybody would, kumbaya and not have all the problems we have in the world? 100%. But I've traveled a lot of the world, as you have, and that's not going to happen.
No,
There's some bad people in the world, and the best thing we can do is have the biggest, strongest military that in the world to make sure that this country maintains what it has always had, which is peace.
Right. Yeah, I had somebody who I consider my mom reached out to me. I think she commented on a post that I did, and she's like, I feel sorry for the military today because, the Gen Zers or, this current batch of kids that are coming in don't know adversity and don't know this and so on and so forth. And I was actually, I kind of like had to jump in there and be like, no. I'm actually pretty positive about what's going on now because, I feel like those kids that are joining the military are still the ones that believe in America, want to fight for America. They're not necessarily doing it for the benefits, although that's not a bad part of it. And, and then specifically in what I did in the military, being a recon Marine, now what these kids are getting, like, I'm still plugged in and I still pay attention to what's going on. And when I'm seeing these young recon Marines train, I'm like in total jealous envy, right? Because of the equipment they're using, the gear that they have. And I was like, man, I wish we had that. But every time I go someplace and I'm talking to these guys, it's just nothing but mutual respect back and forth. And it always kind of reminded me whenever Vietnam recon Marines would show up to our compound when I was active duty, and they would look at us and be like, man, you guys are just amazing and this, that, and whatever. And we're like, wait a minute, you're the amazing ones. So I love being in this community. I love being in the veteran community. I love being in the off-road community. I also think that's the reason why a lot of the sponsors that Warfighter Made has, specifically with BF Goodrich, literally, this is another positive. So we got our sponsorship from Polaris literally out of the Mint 400.
Yeah.
We got our sponsorship with BFG literally out of the Mint 400. Tech and Contingency Day, I'm running around, shaking hands and whatnot. And one of the vets that was working the booth comes running up to me and he's just like, hey, the president of BF Goodrich just stopped by, gave us his business card, and basically said, let me know if there's any way that we can work with each other, right? So I'm looking at this card, and I'm like, Harold Phillips. Who is Harold Phillips? Well, get to know Harold Phillips. Harold's brother died in the Beirut bombings in 1983. His brother was a Marine who was killed in the Beirut bombings. And, Harold said something kind of to the fact that I've waited my whole life to be able to give back. And now I'm in a position where I can do that. And, and I'm just kind of like, well, I'm glad you picked us. So, so it's, just so many great things have come out. I mean, we basically, literally our rugged radios and our pyrotech and all that stuff has come out from being at the Mint 400 and one, having a story, but two, also doing what you say you're going to do
100%
and mean it when you say it
100%. So I think that's the difference is like, there's a lot of organizations and there's a lot of good ones, right? And they do a lot of good things, but like I don't see the effect, right? And I know, again, I'm not traveling to their headquarters and, all that kind of stuff, but I'm in this military community here in Oceanside. I'm in a military community in the off-road culture, San Diego military community. You know what I mean? Like I have a lot of friends that are in the military, both as active duty and as veterans, right? Family that was in the military, on and on. And, you know, you guys, like, to your point, it's like, it's tangible, right? You can touch and feel it. You can see it, right? You can go to the Mint 400 and look at your pit and look at the group of people and go into the VIP and meet people, you know, and see it and be like, oh, this is Robert Blanton. These are the people that he's helping. Talk to them, touch and feel it. And I encourage everybody to do it because, you know, even if you're not going to, as a civilian, donate money or time or anything, just walk up to him and talk to him and say, hey, man, we appreciate you. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're out here having a good time. You know, thank you, you know, for what you do.
Yeah.
You know, I think that just those little things are super important. But yeah, to your point about the Mint being a catalyst for relationships, you know, that's what it is, right? You know,
without a doubt.
And people forget about the marketing side of it, of how that affects everything, you know, and like, yes, we are putting on races for racers, but we're putting on races so that the whole world can see what we're doing, buy those products accordingly, support those causes, you know, and get involved, whether it's physically or whether it's digitally or a donation, whatever it is. Yeah. It doesn't matter as long as they're getting involved. But that's one of the things that, you know, again, I really like. And I remember, you know, Harold calling me and going, hey, so tell me about these Warfighter guys. And I'm like, yeah, they're the real deal. You know, like you guys should get involved, you know, so that when you do your Veterans Day post, that it has some substance behind it, not just like, oh, we love the military, we love the veterans, yay. It's like, really? What did you do? Right? How did you, you know, do that? And especially when you're drawing parallels between companies that actually make products that then go into combat, right? So, no, I think it's rad.
Yeah, every once in a while, you know, Harold's since retired, but every once in a while he would send me a picture and they're at some convention in some other country. And, you know, it's a BFG with a Warfighter Made logo and they're advertising kind of what they're there to do for, but they're also kind of representing Warfighter Made and what they're doing for veterans back at home. Yeah. So, it, you know, totally cool. Appreciate it. Like I said, Harold's gone, but, you know, BFG is still on board. Yeah. You know, they got a lot of great guys over there. Every Mint 400, we always bring one of the BFG veterans that served in the U.S. military. We bring them out and they get to sit behind the wheel. And matter of fact, the BFG rep this year was a guy by the name of TJ. And I don't know if you ever got to see the picture, but he took Beefy, our 6,600-pound Humvee that has Chad Hall long travel suspension on it. And he launched that thing. The Beefy only makes like 180 horsepower. Yeah. It is stock from the engine and trans.
It's pretty much stuck to the ground.
And he freaking launched this thing at least, no exaggeration, 5 feet in the air over the start line. And it landed a little nose heavy, but because we have BFGs and Chad Hall suspension on it, it soaked it right up and it could have gone another 400 miles. So that was so the Warfighter rep that was with him was our brother Giuseppe, and Giuseppe's a Marine and an Army vet. And I guess when TJ was coming around to the finish, there was kind of a little jump there to slow people down so they don't get too much speed to hit that. And he botched it, right? So Giuseppe, being the ever-loving veteran that he is, started harassing TJ. And TJ's like, well, I'm just going to send this. I'm going to send it. And Giuseppe's like, you know, basically no balls him, and he freaking launched that thing. It's super awesome.
Yeah, it was. I did see the photo. I was like, holy cow, man.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. And it's really rewarding for us to, you know, be at the finish line with your whole team and sit there and listen to the stories. You know, I love doing it and seeing the smiles and like, you know, all
and then
that.
Tim Hall, the combat wounded double leg amputee that races for us, he got married on stage last year.
That's right.
You know, how many times has that happened?
Yeah.
So
no, we've actually, the Mint has a long history of marriages, but most of them happen at tech and contingency.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was cool. I saw that. We love that stuff.
And then he finished, he got a top 10 this year. And so they basically celebrated their 1 year anniversary on the stage, you know, because he got the finish. So, you know, just a lot of cool things. I mean, we've had, you know, so many vets that have come out and raced with us, and, you know, a lot of them have now started to become, you know, way more involved in off-roading. And we've actually pulled a couple vets out of some dark places, and you know, they have a new lease, and they're out there having fun.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you're either active duty or a veteran, and you're out there and you're listening to this, we want you involved with off-road racing culture.
Absolutely.
You know, reach out to us. We'll, you know, reach out to Robert via Warfighter Made, or reach out to us at Unlimited Off-Road Racing, and we'll pair you with the team. Tell us what you want to do, and we'll get you involved. It's a great community to be involved in, and everybody appreciates you. I mean, it's funny because, like, now, you know, a lot because of my relationship with you, but, like, I can see teams that have veterans in their team, and I'm like, okay, that guy's a veteran, because they know how to operate, right?
Yeah.
Which is really cool, and you need that for, you know, for chase teams and just for, you know, operating in a large group of people. You need people who have experience with that. I
think that's also important. Let me segue into like Mag 7 Pits. You know, Mag 7 Pits is the OG pit team, and you know, they pretty much operate down in Baja, but they have been trying to gain some traction at the Mint 400. And they got a lot of good guys there, but they're looking for more vets. So, you know, if you know, being a wrench monkey, or you're super mechanically inclined and you enjoy wrenching and problem solving and so on and so forth, Mag 7 is a great place to do that at.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they reach out to you?
So, you know, if somebody wants to reach out, it's they can get to us through social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram, at Warfighter Made. We also have our website is warfightermade.org. In the info section, you can find Kristen, our executive director's email, Kristen at Warfighter Made. Or if anybody specifically has any questions for me, they can always reach out to me at Robert at warfightermade.org.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming down and doing this one, brother.
No,
long time coming.
There's no way I was going to turn this down.
Awesome.
So thank you.